Hi there. Before I start, as always, I just want to say a big thank you to everybody who has been tuning in, everybody who has subscribed, liked, and shared. It really means the world to me, so thank you so much. Don't forget, if you haven't already, to like, share, and subscribe. Whether you're watching on YouTube or you're listening on Spotify, get it out there because it really helps me, and hopefully it helps other people as well. So thank you and welcome. Okay, so funny story to start today's episode with is that I had already recorded this video. I recorded it in a batch, so that's what I try to do. I try to record 2 or 3 at a time, if not more. And I had recorded it at the same time that I recorded the last week's episode. And what I did was I recorded them all in one go, and then I uploaded them onto my desktop and I deleted them off my phone. And then when I delete things on my phone, I then go into the bin and I empty the bin, even though I know it does it automatically. So I did that, and then when I went to edit my videos and sound for my podcast, I couldn't find the video for today's episode. So I don't know if I have deleted the video and then not actually uploaded it, or sorry, uploaded all of the videos, not uploaded that one video, and then deleted it without realizing, or if I just didn't press record, which I find would be really difficult to do because you press record and then you get a big red button on your screen. So I don't know what I did, but anyway, because I deleted, if I had recorded it and deleted it, but then because I deleted everything that was in my bin on my phone, it's gone forever. I can't bring it back. And I've tried, I've looked at it, I've googled it. It says even with third-party apps you can't do it. So there probably is a way, but anyway, I thought it was just better to just re-record it myself. So welcome to this week's re-recorded episode. So like last week where I was talking about my son's birth, today I'm going to be talking about my daughter's birth. Again, I've got a little guide on the behind me because I can't remember all of the details off the top of my head now, and I also won't be going into too much detail about everything because it's just an overall view of my daughter's birth, so that again you get to know me a little bit better and know what kinds of things that I've gone through in terms of giving birth. So I had my son in January 2018, and then in 2019, I think around July, we found out we were pregnant with our daughter. Now, I never found out what we were having with her, so while we knew we were having a boy when I was pregnant with my son, I never found out what we were having with our daughter. So that made the experience kind of different as well. Now, while my son's pregnancy was pretty much textbook all the way through and had no issues whatsoever, with my daughters, we were classed as high risk from the get-go because my son was classed as small for his gestational age when he was born. So I went overdue with my son, and he was £6.6. So he was below average weight, not by much. So because of that, they wanted to have me see a consultant with my daughter, because they suspected that she would probably be small too. When I went for my 12-week scan and they do all of your screening tests, they came back fine. But then a couple of weeks later, I got a phone call from one of the midwives at the hospital. She's like, "Oh, I need you to come in straight away." And I was a bit like, "What?" Like, why? And she was like, "It's nothing serious, but we found that you're low in one of your pregnancy hormones, so we need you to come in straight away so that we can arrange your care and everything." So I was low PAP-A, and because of that increases your risk of low birth weight. It increases your chances of preeclampsia and high blood pressure. So then I was I was already high risk, I was already on consultant care, but that kind of increased that. So it would mean that I would have regular growth scans throughout my pregnancy, and that they would monitor me closely, and they would want to induce me by my due date. I knew that that kind of put me on the back foot, and it was a bit stressful, to be honest. My husband took some holidays from work starting on the 5th of March, so baby was due around the 17th of March. And we were going to just spend those, that last week or so just getting stuff done. I was booked in for an induction on the 17th of March. I was just kind of hoping that things would start on their own before that point. So we were just going to get some bits done in the house, spend some time together, spend some time with our son. But then on the morning of the 6th of March, I woke up and I couldn't feel the baby moving, and she was quite active in the mornings. So I sort of lay in bed for a while, trying to shift my position, see if that woke her up a bit, trying to really concentrate. And I was getting like the odd little movement, but there was nothing really. So when my husband woke up, I told him that I was a bit concerned. So we decided that he would take our son to nursery, I would ring PAU, and we would just take it from there based on what they said. So they said not to worry, have some breakfast and then come in. So in I went. They put me on the monitor, and of course she started moving straight away. They did a scan. So they came in to tell us everything looked fine. But I could sense a but coming. So everything was fine, but the baby's growth had dropped off. So she'd gone from the 25th percentile to the 10th. Now, this was what they were monitoring me for, but at my last consultant appointment before this, they had said, everything's fine, she's growing fine, you don't need to come back, just wait now until, you're nearly at the end of your pregnancy. So when she came back and said that, she said, I'm just going to go and speak to a consultant. And I said to my husband, she's going to come back and recommend being induced early. And he was like, do you think so? Like, it's still a little bit. And I was like, no, she is. So I said that, let's have the conversation now. So we decided we would just go with whatever she said. Now, I'm not sure if I would do things differently if I was having another baby, because I think rather than having the conversation before she came back in, what I'd probably do is wait for more information. So when she came back in, she said, how do you feel about being induced sooner rather than later? And we just said yes. So she had a look in the diary, and funnily enough, there was space for me to come back in the following day at 2:30 in the afternoon. And we left the hospital and went home. So I just want to state right now that I hadn't done a hypnobirthing course with this pregnancy, but I had read a really great book about hypnobirthing, and I'd been listening to some hypnosis tracks, and I felt quite calm. I recognised after this labour where doing a full hypnobirthing course would have been super beneficial, but that's by the by. So we went home, and I couldn't believe that at some point over the weekend, or so I thought, I'd have a baby. So we picked our little boy up from nursery. We notified everybody who needed to know, like my parents, my husband's parents, my sister, who was going to be a second birth partner again. That afternoon, we took my son to my husband's parents' house. And when I say I feel like I was abandoning my little boy to go and have another baby, it still makes me feel emotional. Like, I feel like I could cry just thinking about it. It was horrible. And my mother-in-law said to me, it's normal. Don't worry about feeling that way, because that's not what you're doing, but it's normal to feel that way. But you will be worried that you won't love them the same, and that you'll love them differently, but you won't. You'll love them both exactly the same. Your heart will make more space in it. And she was completely right, of course. And now that I've got them both, and they're both 6 and 4, I don't feel like I have abandoned one for the other, you know. But at the time it felt so horrible. But we left him there. He was delighted to be staying at his grandparents' house. And we went home. I hand expressed some colostrum. I did some bouncing on my birth ball. We tried to just be like really calm. We packed a suitcase, you know, we finished packing everything. And really we just had to keep trying to be positive. I at best was hoping for a similar experience to my son, you know, which, just to remind you, I had 2 pessaries through the course of the evening, and he was born the next afternoon with, in a mostly straightforward manner. So I was very aware that it might not go that way. So I didn't sleep great, because obviously that's what all I could think about was, what if it's going to be a much more stressful situation? What if it doesn't go that way? What if I can't handle it? You know, it was very hard not to spiral and to try and keep those positive thoughts. And again, this is a point where I think if I'd done a full proper hypnobirthing course, I probably wouldn't have been spiraling quite so much. So the next morning we got up, we went about our morning as normally as we possibly could, and we got to the hospital, for 2:30. So the situation, the experience at this point was incredibly similar. They checked us in, for want of a better term, and they did the health questions, asked why we were being induced, did we understand the reasons why, gave us our bed, showed us round, and then a doctor came in to discuss the process with us. The midwife took me along for my first pessary. Again, similar to the first time round, it was uncomfortable, but it wasn't terrible. The breathing techniques that I learned in the hypnobirthing book that I read were really, really useful for this. So I'm pleased that I'd done that. And then it was just a 6-hour waiting game from that point. So again, similar to last time, I did a lot of bouncing on a birth ball. We did a lot of walking in the hospital. I read some of my book, and I had a tablet with me with movies on. So that was, it was a bit boring, but it was fine. I did start to get a couple of cramps at some point, but I kind of just thought that was just the pessary taking effect. Although I secretly did hope it was the start of my contractions. They put me on the monitor, and they did find that I was having some mild contractions. But they asked if I wanted any pain relief at that point, and I said I didn't really feel the need for any. Part of me wanted to make sure that I was fully experiencing the sensations, so that I would know for definite if I'd gone into labour. But also it was just really mild, so I didn't think it was that important. I had another examination at about 10:30 that night, so by this point my husband had gone home, and I was just kind of trying to rest and entertain myself. I wasn't progressing at that point, which is a terminology that I really don't like, but it's what they use. So I wasn't progressing, so they gave me another pessary, but the midwife was really, really positive and hopeful that because my first labour and the pessaries had taken effect so quickly, the same would happen. But she explained that they probably wouldn't let me have the birth pool because they'd want to monitor me closely. Now, I know now that they can't deny that unless it's being used. But back then, even though I knew a bit more about what was going on, I still took it at face value that I just couldn't say, well, actually, no, that's what I really want. However, I just tried to concentrate on the other things that I wanted for this labour. I went back to bed, I was put on the monitor again, I was still getting slight contractions, so that was good. So I popped a comedy on the tablet and I tried to just doze off. I found that when I laid down, the mild cramps that I was feeling went away, so I kind of felt like I'd slowed my progression by trying to get some rest, but actually I did the right thing, because at this point, you know, rest is really important. They checked me again at 4:15 in the morning. They put me on the monitor and took me for another examination, and I kind of really started to spiral here. I hadn't progressed. I thought that I would have at least dilated a centimetre, but nothing. The midwife gave me a full sweep, and they did start to discuss the possibility that they might want to break my waters, but that wouldn't necessarily start my labour, and I might find that I would be in discomfort for longer. So I was really against that, and I'm really pleased that they explained it the way they did, because if they'd said, well, there's a next stage to try and progress things, we'll break your waters, at that point I might have just said, yes, do it, because I want to get things going. But actually probably what would have happened is they would have broken my waters, and at that point most hospitals will state that their policy is that if you haven't gone into labour within 24 hours, you either need to go on the hormone drip or have a cesarean. And I didn't really want to do either of those things, although I would have opted for the cesarean over the hormone drip. So I'm really pleased at how they explained that. But by this point, I would have to now wait for 18 hours before they would give me the pessary, the next pessary. And I cried at this point. I was really upset. My son had come so quickly and this baby just wasn't doing anything. But I recognised after the fact that it was because I was being induced before my estimated due date. And while they're just an estimate, obviously the longer your baby is in, the more chances of your body being ready to go into labour. So they were trying to force labour before my body was at that point of being ready to do so. So it did make sense. But another day continued. I really struggled through this day. I was crying on and off a lot, which won't have been great for my birth hormones. I just didn't know. I didn't know what was going to happen next. And that was a real struggle for me. I was tired. I was uncomfortable. I was a bit scared, to be honest, and I didn't know what to do. And my husband was trying his best to be comforting. He was trying to make me laugh. It's funny because I can feel myself getting upset talking about it. It's just really strange. The midwives were really, really reassuring though, and at one point I sat and I had a chat with them and they really calmed me down. So if you were in this situation and things are taking a while and you feel yourself spiraling and getting upset and feeling a bit scared, get somebody to talk to you, because otherwise you're just sitting there not knowing and guessing. Anyway, let's move on from that. So my husband left. Obviously we had a son at home. My mum and sister came to see me for a bit, which was a really nice distraction. We went for a walk. They sat with me while I was on the birth ball, and I was starting to get more uncomfortable cramps. Again, they were still just cramps, but that was good. You know, it felt like things were getting closer. At this point, I was into my second night in hospital, which really isn't an awful lot, but when you're waiting to go into labour, it feels like a lot. And I actually at one point started to feel like Rachel out of Friends, because there were 4 beds in our room and everybody who had been there when I started had gone off to have their babies, and new people kept coming and going to have their babies. So that was really frustrating as well, but a little bit funny. Anyway, I kept, watching a comedy, got into bed and tried to rest some more. But at this point, they were coming in to check my blood pressure regularly and things like that. So I wasn't getting much rest. I was then put on the monitor again. but they couldn't pick up our heartbeat, so I had to sit and hold like one of the handheld Dopplers like on my bump in a certain position for about 40 minutes, which was neither restful or comfortable or easy. So finally we got to midnight and they started talking about the possibility of giving me my next pessary, which would mean another 6-hour wait to then be checked, which felt a little bit discouraging. But at the same time I thought, well, at least we're at that point now. It's been 18 hours just about, so we've passed the 18 hours. So about 1:45 in the morning they went and checked they gave me a vaginal examination, and they realised that actually I didn't need a pessary. I had dilated enough that they could break my waters. So I had to go back on the monitor for a bit, but that was, really, really encouraging. I felt really positive because it just meant that things were going forward. So about 1:30 in the morning, they came and took me to the delivery suite. My husband met us there, and I just felt so calm and so relieved and positive. It was an amazing switch, amazing. So what I want you to remember when you were going through these lengthy processes, your body is working. It just takes time. We had an incredible midwife. She was so kind and calm. She didn't discuss my birth plan, but she had clearly read it. She suggested dimming the lights. She didn't use any medical jargon. She was just so encouraging, and in the points where, things feel low and you start to think like, I'm not sure I can go on, she was she was like having a little coach with me. She was like, oh, you can do it. You think about how well you've done, think about how far you've come. Now at this point, I lost off a little bit. When I had my first labour, my sister was there with me from the point that they broke my waters, and she made notes of everything, but because it was the middle of the night, we couldn't actually get a hold of her. They broke my waters and my labour started instantly. Like literally like that. I just started having contractions, which I didn't think ever really happened to anybody, but I guess sometimes these things do. So immediately my contractions were about 3 to 4 minutes apart and about 40 seconds to a minute in length. Because they were so close together, I found myself sometimes saying like, no, I can't have another one, not yet. My sister did eventually make it there, which was great, although I thought she was gonna miss everything. I was on the monitor all the time, pretty much here, and the baby's heart rate was dropping, which I now know is actually quite normal when you're having contractions. They flushed my veins with a saline solution to see if that would pick things up, and they kept moving me about a lot to try again, see if the position change would pick things up. She was quite happy with how I was progressing though. I used a lot of positive visualization. We did birth affirmations. We put the radio on. I even started to drift off a little bit between my contractions. It was really, really nice. I managed a lot longer to just breathe through the surges as well. I did eventually get gas and air though. The problem is lying down when you're in labour causes a lot more problems than if you're upright, but I couldn't be up and about because I was on continuous monitoring. So I realised that things are getting a little bit disjointed at this point, and that is just because we weren't really keeping track of what was going on, which is much better for your mindset. I did manage to get up and move about for a little bit, and that was quite a relief. Now, I'm not sure at what time exactly everything was happening, but it was still sort of onto the early hours of the morning when another midwife came in just to assist my midwife. I think probably just to like give her a little bit of relief. and she went out to do some paperwork or something, and she had not been gone very long when I got an incredibly powerful contraction and felt my body bearing down, and I said, bring her back. I think baby's coming. She came in and she absolutely knew what was going on. She had just such a knowing smile, and she said, like, I thought you weren't very far off. And I actually wonder if she left the room just to give me that space for my body to feel comfortable into progressing to that stage. So I kept puffing on the gas and air. I wasn't in stirrups, but I was on my back. When I asked if I could move, she said no, she wanted to have a view of the baby coming out. I was able to wiggle a little bit, which I found was really helpful. And the next thing I knew, she was out. I was pushing much harder than I'd intended. You know, I'd intended to really focus on breathing the baby out, but at this point, I think I was just fed up and I just wanted her out. But she was out, and she was born at 6 a.m, weighing £6.5, which was an ounce less than our brother. I didn't know that she was a girl, of course, and everybody was just shouting, look down, as they were handing her to me, but she was placed on my chest. We did delayed cord clamping, I'm not sure how long for, and it was just, she was just there. So all that time, you know, we'd gone into the hospital a couple of days before, and things were taking so long to progress, all that time, and it took me 11 minutes to birth her. That's what it said on my records afterwards. My birthing stage was 11 minutes. And she was out. So yeah, I couldn't quite believe that. But I was exhausted, absolutely exhausted. So they checked me for tearing. I tore the exact same as I did with my son. They stitched me up. I delivered my placenta. I had the injection for it. Much like with my son, it started to separate, and so I had to still push it out. They stitched me up. They gave her vitamin K. And I just lay in the bed, having skin to skin with her for ages. The room was starting to get lighter. My sister left to go and do her own school run. And it was just peaceful and lovely. However, I shifted in the bed a bit and felt like a pain. And obviously you get after pains when you've had your baby. So I was just like, oh, it's probably normal. I'll just shift the other way and it'll probably calm down a bit, but it didn't. And then I went dizzy and felt like I was just going to go under. And I just said to my husband, take the baby and get somebody in here. The midwife came in, or not my midwife, but somebody else came in. She went, oh, you probably just had a bit of a bleed. She lifted the sheet to look, and she just must have hit a button. And the room just flooded with people. I'm not going to go into too much detail right now, but basically I was having a postpartum hemorrhage. I was told they thought it was because my clots were stuck and they had to clear them. So it wasn't that I'd had a bleed, I was bleeding. They tried to clear them there, and then they were like, we can do it. It won't be very nice, but we can do it. So I was like, please, you know, try it. But I could not take it anymore. So they rushed me off to theatre. They put me under. And the next thing I knew, I was waking up, and it had been about 3 hours. I was waking up. My husband and baby were there. I was okay. I had another lovely midwife who gave me one-to-one care for the rest of the day. I stayed in the labour room for the rest of the day, and I felt horrifically weak. I'd lost 1,800 mils of blood, and that's why I felt horrifically weak. I went on to have a blood transfusion a couple of days later, and I did feel a lot better. after that, but I would feel weak for a long time. So that was where if I'd done hypnobirth and how different would have things been had come from, that really pushed me to become an instructor. Just to wrap this up, I'm just going to give you some details about that. So my labour was established at 3 a.m, so that's where you're classed as 4 centimetres. My second stage labour, my pushing stage, was established at 5:49 a.m, and I delivered my placenta at 6:20 a.m. So all in all, it was a very short labour, which, you know, considering I've been waiting for it to start so long, I was quite pleased about. It's not necessarily always a better thing to have a shorter labour, but for me, in that time, it was. So that's that. That is how my 4-year-old was born. Now, I said last week that I would be going into more detail about the different stages of my labours and things like that in another episode, and I will in the future. But for now, I just really wanted you to know what my experiences had been like. So now you know what both of my birth experiences were like. So I'm just going to say goodbye for now. And thank you for listening, and drop any questions or comments you've got below. And I will speak to you next week, where I will be just giving you a little preview of what is to come in June. Bye.